Now, let's see what that Twitter poll has to say. Wow, 100% of you wanted the modern D&D? Okay, let's do it. Hey everybody, it's the Aries 1999 coming back at you in another video. In today's video, we will be taking the aspects of Dungeons & Dragons and trying to apply them to a modern day setting. It will be like Skyrim meets GTA. Now, first up, the way I see it, there are two main approaches to this, both of which we are going to go over. The first way is to bring the modern era to a fantasy world. After all, this world is inhabited by people who are constantly making improvements to the world around them. Those people had a time before they invented metal, or writing, or even agriculture, and their world looked a lot different back then. So, logically speaking, barring some apocalyptic event, they will one day build a world that looks like ours. You know, a world with electricity and vehicles and the internet. If you're going for this approach, here are some questions that you can ask yourself when shaping the world. So, how is magic related to technology? Is magic involved in generating power? Do they rely on carbon fuels, or have they found a better way to generate electricity using magic? Could they be using solar panels, perhaps in conjunction with the daylight spell? Do their cars need gas, or are they just bewitched to move? Is there a pollution issue like we have? How do druids, rangers, and woodland creatures feel about the expansion of cities? And other things along that nature. So, magic will let people make better technology. The better the technology, the better the magic they can access. Instrumentation lets scientists better understand the world, so they could then use this understanding to make new spells. Go ahead and expand the spell list. Think about spells that would be good for modern day life, like maybe there's a TV remote spell or something. Speaking of technology, you may want to incorporate something like a technology skill. This could be an intelligence-based skill and used for stuff like figuring out how machines work, reading schematics, or building stuff. Because there's not really a skill in D&D right now that would work for that. You know, it would also be really easy to share spells. I mean, 1,000 years ago, most people couldn't read and could only perform some basic arithmetic. These days, literacy is the norm, and most people can perform at least algebra. People could study spells off the internet or go to the library to borrow complete magical collections. Because of that, I would allow every player to know at least one or two cantrips, regardless of their class. And I would also allow spellcasters of each class to know more spells, because, as we just established, it would be easier for them to learn. I guess wizards could just print spells into their spellbooks, or maybe they use electronic tablets in place of spellbooks. At this point, you may be wondering what kind of adventures the players can go on. After all, in the modern world, you can't just go storming castles to collect treasure. Doing that will probably land you in jail, so here's some quest ideas. Someone is manipulating magical zoo animals and has to be stopped. There was a shipwreck and the player characters are stranded on an island. Some gang has gotten their hands on magic weapons and has to be taken care of. Or, if you want to go for that Neo-Enterprise with a classic twist route, how about some archaeologist opens up a cursed tomb and the party is called in to investigate what dangers lie within. We will be using an example like that to transition to our other approach to this format. Bring the fantasy world to the modern era. Let's say you take our modern world and you throw some magic into it. Perhaps the tomb example above is a lost Egyptian tomb that reveals the secrets of ancient magic, and once that is out, people will begin studying the mystic arts of other civilizations. Once people that know that magic was used by one ancient civilization, they'll probably be looking for others that may have used it. If you want to have a pre-modern era of D&D, an Egyptian tomb would be a great way to do it. The Rosetta Stone was first used in the early 1800s to decipher hieroglyphics, so imagine how magic would affect things like the Napoleonic Wars, the Western expansion of the United States, or the late Qing dynasty? Jing? I'm sorry, I don't know how to spell that. Or pronounce it rather. Qing. If someone knows how, can you put that down in the comments? Thank you. In our modern context, imagine how magic would affect things like the territorial conflicts in the Middle East, the pollution epidemic, the march to the stars, etc. Perhaps the party was hired to transport an ancient magic text from one part of the world to another. I would put an adventure like this at least a decade after the discovery of magic, so that it's feasible that the party would have some spellcasters. Perhaps they actually aren't as powerful as regular D&D spellcasters though, because people still don't really understand magic yet. Another way to add fantasy to the modern is a Percy Jackson-esque adventure. There might be secret magical communities who try their hardest to keep the truth from the world at large. This would mean that the party would have to be very discreet when using their magic in public. Perhaps they have to stealthily secure a secret society of Shanghai spellcasters to stop some sinister scheme. Say, that sounds stupendous. And in case you're wondering, yes, I did say that on my first try. Maybe you could use that as an opportunity to recreate adventures from Percy Jackson, Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel, or Wizards of Waverly Place. There are a lot of stories about magic hiding in the modern world, so they could be fun to play through. Now let's talk about weaponry. The first thing that comes to my mind is firearms. I have an entire video on the subject which I'm linking to here and in the description. Check it out when you're finished with this video. And then come back and watch this video again, and then watch the firearm video again. Gotta get those boosts in the YouTube algorithm. As for explosives, I touched on these in my Fallout video, but we can go back over them now. This could operate as a version of the fireball spell, and there may also be an element of force damage. Something like a grenade could do 3d8 fire damage in a 5-foot radius. A rocket launcher may do something like 46 fire and 46 force in a 10-foot radius. Either of those would be a ranged weapon attack, but instead of dealing with AC, everyone in range would have to make a dex save for half damage, and the save would be equal to your attack roll. As for protection, these days, most armor is either fiber or ceramic based. This makes it lightweight but still durable. People keep inventing better armor and better weapons to break through the armor, so the defense is stronger, but so is the offense. This is where we have to accept that in D&D, and all games really, the numbers are mostly arbitrary. It's all about how the numbers relate to the numbers of other characters. To give a video example, the Halo Spartans would destroy the Call of Duty Black Ops because their tech is just simply more advanced.
Stand! We threw everything we had at him! How is he still standing?
How? Well, it's quite simple, really. You see, girlie, you may think you got me all figured out, but there's one thing you didn't account for. My numbers are bigger than yours.
My point here is that I wouldn't really change the game stats for armor. The heavier armor is still going to protect more than the lighter armor, and the exact numbers themselves aren't really what's important. Vehicle technology. Now, that is something that's definitely changing, because of how much easier it would make transportation. No more trekking for 10 days at a time to get to the next town, the party can just drive there. If you find travel to be a pretty boring part of the game, this could definitely help. If you want, you can still give them some trouble though. Perhaps their car breaks down and some animals attack while they're trying to fix it. Now, I could probably keep going on about tech all day, so let's just cut it off there and segue from the Dungeon Master side of things to the player side of things for character creation. If the DM is having the D&D world evolve to modern times, or is using the secret world approach where the characters were born in the magic side of things, then the creation process would be mostly the same and you would probably have access to all the races. If the DM is going for the magical discovery approach, you would probably only be able to play as a human. For your class, ask yourself what this new discovery means to you. Magic suddenly being introduced into the world would mean drastically different things to different people. This could apply to the secret world approach as well if your character just found out about magic. Those who see the magic as a gift from a higher power would most likely become clerics, paladins, or warlocks. Those who just see magic as part of the flow of nature might become druids, rangers, or sorcerers. Those who focus on the artistic side of magic may become bards, and those who see magic from a scientific, perhaps even quantum physical view might become something like wizards. And I didn't forget about you non-spellcasters. An armed guard or a soldier might become a fighter. A spy or a mob assassin could become a rogue. A martial artist could become a monk. And I guess someone who does physical labor and is really strong could become a barbarian? So with that kind of approach, you might want to design the character first and choose the class later, which is the opposite of how most people make their characters, so it could be interesting. The backgrounds translate pretty well into a modern setting. After all, we still have entertainers and sailors. But I went ahead and made 4 new backgrounds for the modern setting. I will link to each of these in the description below. First up is Medic. Proficient with Medicine and Insight. They can use a healer's kit and get 1 extra language, and you can choose or roll from one of 8 medical specialities like nurse or paramedic. Their background feature is diagnosis, which lets them figure out what is wrong with someone. Next, there is Attorney. They are proficient with persuasion and investigation. They can use calligrapher supplies and get 1 extra language. Their background feature is legal standing, which lets them be heard in some official setting where other people may be forced to stay silent. Then there is Mechanic. They are proficient in that aforementioned technology skill and insight. They can use mechanics tools, a homebrew tool which lets them work on machines, and their background feature is, well, let me take a look, which lets them examine a piece of machinery to figure out how it works. Lastly, there is Boy Scout. Yes, really, I made a D&D background based around Boy Scouts, because you know what? This is my show. They are proficient with nature and medicine. They can use navigator's tools, and you can choose or roll from one of 8 roles within the troop, each one giving you some different game benefit. Their background feature is Lay of the Land, which lets them survive in the woods. They also have a variant background called Sea Scout, which is a sailor version of Scouts. I actually have some ideas for doing an entire Boy Scout themed homebrew adventure, so we can definitely look into that someday. Well, that's all we really have time for today. I know there's a lot I didn't talk about, so I will return to this theme of different takes on modern Dungeons & Dragons. If you want to check out some more of my stuff, I have 30 videos on this channel now, most of which are D&D related. I also run an actual play 5e podcast called Enter the Dungeon, a regularly Pudcast. You can follow me on Twitter at TAries1999. Well, I think that's a bit of a self-plug here for today, so I'll let you guys go. Have a great day, and God bless.